As the first light of dawn crept over the dry valley, a sense of unease settled over the village, the air thick with anticipation. The villagers, who had grown to revere the annual return of the gray heron, now gathered at the edge of the pond, their faces etched with worry. Tomas, the old man who had dedicated his life to keeping a promise, was nowhere to be seen. The pond, once a vibrant oasis, seemed to hold its breath, its fate uncertain. And then, a murmur spread as the crowd caught sight of small, muddy hands planting fresh reeds in the earth, exactly as Tomas had taught them. The promise, it seemed, had been passed on, but to what end? Only the heron knew as it circled above, its calm eyes watching, waiting, its annual return now a reminder of a debt repaid and a new story unfolding. To truly understand the scene at dawn and the quiet testament of those children, we must journey back 40 years. Not to an oasis, but to a valley forever parched, where the sun seemed to drain all color. This was the world of a boy named Tomas, then barely 10, whose small house clung to the land's dry edge. His days were often spent alone, watching the horizon shimmer, only the rustle of dry weeds and a distant hawk breaking the silence. One stifling evening, as the last light bled from the sky, Tomas stumbled upon a sight that would alter his path. Near the shallow, murky remnants of a fishing pond, a tall gray heron lay snared in a forgotten net, its powerful wing twisted. The coarse twine bit into its flesh, but Tomas was struck by the bird's stillness. Its large, liquid eyes, usually wild, held an unnerving calm, a profound dignity even in pain. He felt the faint, rapid thump of its heart. The villagers, when he fetched them, shook their heads. "It won't last the night, boy," his uncle declared. But Tomas couldn't leave it. He spent the long hours of darkness beside the wounded creature, carefully dripping precious well water onto its beak, his small voice a low murmur. "If you live," he whispered a desperate prayer, "I will make sure you always have a safe place to come back to. Every year, forever." Miraculously, it lived. Weeks later, it beat its wings skyward, circling once above Tomas, a silent acknowledgement, before vanishing over the distant, blue-hazed hills. A peculiar emptiness settled in Tomas, mingled with hope. Then came each spring, precisely as the almond blossoms bloomed, the same lone gray heron, a faint scar near its eye, descended. It landed in the same muddy field beside Tomas's house, a silent sentinel, a living promise kept. But the field, even with the heron's presence, was slowly dying. The water sank deeper each season, reeds turned brittle, and the bird had less to return to. The weight of his vow, once so light, began to press on Tomas. He watched the heron, then the shrinking puddle, and then, without a word, he found his father's old shovel. It was rusty, heavy, but Tomas began to dig. The earth was hard, but the promise now demanded more. The earth, baked to terracotta under the relentless sun, offered stiff resistance to Tomas's old shovel. Each thrust was a jolting effort, the thunk of metal meeting packed soil echoing in the valley's vast stillness. Fine, ochre dust puffed up with every scoop, coating his skin, clinging to the sweat on his brow. His hands, raw and blistered, quickly toughened to worn leather. An ache in his muscles was his constant companion until he collapsed onto a straw mat at night. He worked, a small, solitary figure, driven by the phantom presence of the heron's calm, liquid gaze, a beacon against the dry land's indifference. Day after day, the brutal sun relentlessly beat down. "Still digging for that bird, Tomas," neighbors would call, their voices tinged with bewildered amusement. "You'll crack before the earth does." Yet their words, like the dry wind, held little sway. The whispered promise, a desperate prayer, became an internal lodestone, anchoring him, compelling him forward. He'd bring precious buckets from his dwindling well, pouring them into the shallow depression, only to watch the water vanish instantly, swallowed by the thirsty earth. It felt an impossible task, the hollow barely a dent in the vast, brown landscape. Doubt, an insidious weed, often tried to take root. What am I doing? But he'd remember the heron's patient endurance, resolving to be patient too. The digging evolved. He wasn't just carving earth. He needed to hold the water. This meant arduous journeys to a distant riverbed for heavy, rich clay, hauled back sack by sack. Mixing it with bare hands, kneading the cool, damp earth, he painstakingly pressed it into the sides and bottom of his nascent pond. Each small section of lining was a triumph, a tiny victory against overwhelming odds. His mud-caked fingers shaped the future. To any casual observer, the valley remained mostly brown, the transformation almost imperceptible. But in that slowly deepening hollow, a different kind of green began to bloom, not of plants yet, but of stubborn, unwavering hope. The first faint scent of damp earth, rather than dry dust, was his quiet reward. The fragile hope that bloomed with the scent of damp earth was brutally short-lived. Just as Tomas began to imagine the pond truly holding its shape, a fierce, unseasonal heat wave descended, gripping the valley like a clenched fist. The sun, usually a distant companion, now pressed down with malevolent intent, baking the clay lining to a brittle shell, sucking moisture from the air from the very stones. The wind, which once whispered of distant rains, now carried only dust and the dry rustle of dying leaves. Tomas watched, helpless, as the precious water he'd hauled began to recede. Each morning, the waterline crept visibly lower, revealing more of the cracked, thirsty clay. He tried everything, covering the small surface with woven mats, deepening the sides, digging shallow trenches to catch stray drops. But the earth, after its long drought, seemed an insatiable maw. His shovel's thwack now sounded less like progress and more like a desperate, futile pounding. It's a losing battle, Tomas, his older sister, Anna, had said gently one evening, her eyes full of pity. Some promises are too heavy. Her words, meant as comfort, felt like an accusation. He remembered the heron's calm, almost knowing eyes, those long hours in the dark, and the quiet vow he'd made. Was it hubris to think he, a mere boy then, could defy the very land? Doubt a dry, choking dust settled in his chest. One particular night, the air itself seemed to crackle with static, devoid of any coolness. He sat by the pond's edge, a small, weary sentinel, watching the last sliver of water shimmer under a skeletal moon. It was barely a puddle, reflecting only his own exhausted face. The thought of the heron, due to return with the spring, finding nothing but parched earth, twisted in his gut. He pictured its perfect descent, then the confusion, the eventual flight, never to return. A single tear, hot and unwelcome, traced a path through the dust on his cheek. It felt like a betrayal not just of the bird, but of the boy he had been. He ran his hand over the dry, cracked clay. He had promised a safe place. This was a grave. The memory of the bird's injured wing, its stoic acceptance, became a heavy weight. He closed his eyes, wishing for the earth to simply swallow him whole. The first hint of dawn was not hope, but a stark, cold light, illuminating the utter desolation of his small, shrinking oasis. As the children worked, the villagers watched, mesmerized, as the pond's tranquility began to seep into their souls. The heron, now a symbol of Tomas's unwavering dedication, circled above, its gaze sweeping over the landscape it had helped transform. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers and the gentle hum of bees as they flitted from petal to petal. The earth, once parched and barren, now teemed with life, a testament to the power of a single promise. The villagers, who had once thought Tomas's endeavor foolish, now saw the beauty in his persistence. They realized that the heron's annual return was not just a reminder of Tomas's promise, but a celebration of the valley's rebirth. As the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the pond, the villagers knew that they would continue to tend to the land, to nurture the life that had sprung forth from Tomas's dream. The heron, sensing that its work was done, began to fly away, its wings beating slowly as it disappeared into the distance. The villagers watched, their eyes shining with tears, as the bird vanished into the horizon, leaving behind a legacy of hope and renewal. The promise, once made by a frightened boy to a wounded bird, had grown into something much larger, a symbol of the transformative power of dedication and perseverance. As the villagers turned to leave, they knew that they would never forget the lessons they had learned from Tomas and the heron, and that they would continue to tend to the land, keeping the promise alive for generations to come. As the heron disappears into the horizon, the villagers are left to ponder the true meaning of the promise made so many years ago. The story of Tomas and the gray heron serves as a poignant reminder of the impact one person can have on their community and the environment. We invite you to share your own experiences of perseverance and dedication, and how they have transformed your life and the lives of those around you. What is a promise you've made that has had a profound impact on your journey?